We have new information from the once mysterious deaths of Gene Hackman and his wife, Betsy Arakawa. The final autopsies of the couple were just released.
Gene Hackman was never the Hollywood star everyone expected. Gritty, weathered, and endlessly underestimated. His career was built on defying the odds, but what no one truly knew were the hidden battles his body and mind waged long before his death. What happens when a legend's private pain finally comes to light through an embalmer's confession and medical findings? The truth about his final days challenges everything fans thought they understood, revealing a life marked by resilience and quiet suffering that lasted until the very end. Secrets behind the silence. Gene Hackman's death was shrouded in unusual silence for weeks, a quiet that no one could immediately explain. Behind closed doors, an investigation unfolded amid growing speculation, but the truth refused to surface until the medical examiner's report finally broke the lock on the mystery. This was not just about a cause of death. It was about uncovering the hidden burdens Hackman carried within his body, quietly fighting battles as the world saw a legend who seemed untouchable. What emerged from that report challenged everything fans thought they knew about the man behind the fame. For much of his life, Hackman maintained a carefully guarded exterior, a man who lived intensely but let few see what he truly endured. The embalmer's silence mirrored the actor's lifelong privacy, a protective barrier hiding vulnerability beneath a tough shell. When the report surfaced, it revealed signs of a long struggle with serious health issues that had been kept from public view, from advanced Alzheimer's disease to severe heart conditions. These details gave new meaning to the quietness that surrounded his final days, a revelation as profound as it was somber. The scene investigators found was unsettling. Two bodies in separate rooms, both showing evidence of having been deceased for some time. One was Hackman, age 95. The other, his wife, Betsy Arakawa, who was 3 decades his junior.
Autopsy examination and full-body post-mortem CT demonstrated no findings of trauma internally or externally.
Their deaths were not accompanied by violence or trauma, but by a stillness that spoke of isolation and care quietly slipping away. The mystery deepened as officials ruled out early suspicions like carbon monoxide poisoning, leaving many to wonder what had truly unfolded within those walls. Public curiosity grew as rumors circulated, adding layers of speculation and theory onto the facts. But beneath the headlines was a quieter, more complex reality, a man who had once fought for every opportunity and who now faced the most private of battles alone. The truth was not scandalous, it was heartbreaking. It was about a man who never wanted to be seen as vulnerable, yet whose body finally revealed how much he had been carrying in silence. As the medical examiner reviewed the evidence, the story kind of flipped from rumor into confirmation, like suddenly it wasn't just talk anymore. There was extensive heart disease, kidney damage, and plaques inside his arteries. All of it together, showing a body worn down by time and illness. The fact that a ventricular pacemaker had been implanted years earlier didn't help his case. It also read like a marker of steady decline, slow and certain. But maybe the most affecting detail was what they saw in his brain. Clear indications of advanced Alzheimer's, and that truth was never really shared in public. Still, even that wasn't the whole thing. Trace amounts of acetone in Hackman's system hinted that in his last days he likely went through a long period without food. It's a small chemical clue, but it hits hard because it suggests a kind of isolation and confusion that probably filled his final moments. And that doesn't match the commanding energy he once had on screen, not even close. It felt like a quiet plea for help, present but unseen, and in the end, unheard. The investigation also brought more light to Betsy Arakawa's final days, showing how she was urgently trying to find answers while she battled a rare but deadly disease. Her internet searches and emails pointed to flu-like symptoms, plus worries about carbon monoxide exposure. When all of that was pieced together, the overall picture settled into place. Two people wrestling with unseen battles, left in silence because help wasn't there in time. This was the turning point that reshaped what people thought about Gene Hackman's death. It wasn't some neat ending wrapped in mystery or a scandal story for headlines, but rather an honest, even if painful, look at the final fragility of a famously guarded man. The silence got interrupted, the truth came out under the cold light of medical findings, and it's a narrative of quiet suffering that stays with you, long after the public persona fades. The hardships facing Hackman were deeply rooted in his early life, where personal struggles and defiance first ignited the fire that would shape him. A troubled childhood and early defiance. Gene Hackman's childhood was marked by instability, anger, and abandonment. At 13, he watched his father leave the family with little more than a casual wave goodbye. That moment stayed with Hackman for decades, shaping the emotional toughness and insecurity that later followed him into adulthood. Movies offered one of his few escapes. Trips to the theater with his mother gave him a glimpse of another world, while his everyday life pushed him toward rebellion. He frequently challenged authority and even spent a night in jail after stealing candy and soda. At 16, Hackman enlisted in the Marines, hoping military life might give him direction. Instead, his defiant nature followed him. He often clashed with superiors and struggled with discipline. His service eventually ended after a serious motorcycle accident left him with a broken leg and led to his discharge. Back in civilian life, Hackman remained restless and unsure of his future. But memories of those childhood movie theaters never disappeared. In his early 20s, acting began to feel like more than an escape. He moved to New York and pursued theater, determined to build a new life. Success was still far away, but the painful childhood and rebellious spirit that shaped him would eventually become part of his greatest strength. The whole journey was kinda grueling. Hackman really had to rely on this mix of exhausting work just to keep himself moving forward, like a night shift polishing leather chairs in a skyscraper's corporate office, which was a pretty humble task, not exactly the big aspirations he was carrying around in his head. Then, fate stepped in, and in a painful way too. A former Marine sergeant, later on, when Hackman was working as a doorman, looked him over and didn't seem impressed by his uniform at all, then muttered this cutting insult without even bothering to meet his eyes. Somehow, it didn't break him. Instead, it lit up this fierce, non-stop fire inside him. That defiant mood became his engine. All those years of dismissal and doubt, turning up everywhere, got reshaped into the drive to prove people wrong. Along with that hard ambition, there was this key ally, Faye Maltese, who saw something in him when most others didn't.
While attending a New York YMCA dance, she was a bank clerk, and the two hit it off right away. They'll marry on January the 1st, 1956.
Their marriage in 1956 was like a hinge point. It brought stability, encouragement, and even pushed him to study acting seriously at the Pasadena Playhouse. Still, even in acting school, things didn't just fall into place. He was older than most classmates and a bit rough in the way he presented himself, so he had trouble fitting in. Plus, he clashed with authority again, in the same old pattern. Some instructors basically mocked him and openly predicted he'd fail. And when it was over, he left with the lowest grades the school had ever handed out. One odd friendship did hold, though it wasn't expected at all. Dustin Hoffman, another misfit, who stayed close, and who shared that same outsider status and that stubborn want to succeed. So that early life, all the trauma, rebellion, and grit, yeah, it became the base for Hackman's distinctive acting approach, something driven by raw honesty and by experience he actually lived. But before his impact on cinema could fully happen, he still had to climb this tough uphill battle, building a career in an industry that was notoriously difficult. His arduous path toward stardom was marked by rejection, struggle, and the slow climb from obscurity to critical acclaim. The long, hard road to success. By the early 1960s, Gene Hackman was taking small film and television roles, slowly building the experience that would eventually change his life. His breakthrough arrived in 1967 with Bonnie and Clyde, where his performance as Buck Barrow earned him an Academy Award nomination for Best Supporting Actor. But success came after devastating personal loss. In 1962, Hackman's mother died in a house fire. She had helped spark his love of movies, making her death especially painful as his acting career was beginning to take shape. Hackman responded by throwing himself deeper into his craft. He studied people closely, paying attention to gestures, habits, and behavior he could bring into his performances. That dedication eventually led to the role that made him a star. In 1971, Hackman played Detective Popeye Doyle in The French Connection. Director William Friedkin had considered several other actors before choosing him, something that reportedly fed Hackman's longtime insecurities. Rather than letting rejection defeat him, Hackman used it as fuel. He poured frustration, determination, and raw intensity into the role. The demanding production pushed him physically and emotionally, but the result transformed his career. His performance earned the Academy Award for Best Actor and finally established Gene Hackman as one of Hollywood's most powerful leading men. Despite his rising fame, Hackman struggled with feelings of invisibility and doubt, a shadow that followed him into later roles. In Francis Ford Coppola's 1974 The Conversation, he learned the part was initially written for Marlon Brando. Once again, rejection became motivation, infusing his performance with deep emotional truth. Role after role, Hackman turned professional setbacks into fuel for unforgettable characters. As success brought wealth, the demands of maintaining it grew heavier. Hackman's lifestyle became a whirlwind of luxury and excess, but financial pressures eventually forced him to accept roles that did not align with his artistic values. There were difficult times, including moments of profound discouragement and thoughts of leaving acting altogether. Personal losses compounded his struggles. The tragic death of his closest friend, Norman Gary, in 1981, and the eventual end of his 3-decade marriage in 1986 marked painful chapters in his life. Yet his professional career endured, highlighted by acclaimed roles such as his FBI agent in Mississippi Burning, which earned him another Academy Award nomination. Still, his guarded nature remained, encapsulating a man balancing fame and profound personal complexity. Throughout these years, Hackman's persistence and talent turned rejection into legendary performances, and his journey from obscurity to stardom was anything but straightforward. The harsh realities behind his success reveal a man who refused to give up, no matter the odds, setting the stage for the intense roles and private battles that would define the rest of his life. The transformation in his craft was inseparable from the personal terrains he traversed, leading to some of the most iconic moments in film history. The man behind the performances. Gene Hackman's greatest performances were fueled by more than talent. They were shaped by personal struggles he carried throughout his life. His breakthrough came in 1971 with The French Connection, where he portrayed the relentless detective Popeye Doyle. The role earned him an Academy Award, but success did little to erase his insecurities. Knowing he was not the director's first choice only intensified his determination, and that drive helped create one of cinema's most unforgettable characters. Hackman continued turning personal emotions into powerful performances. In 1974's The Conversation, directed by Francis Ford Coppola, he played a surveillance expert consumed by isolation and paranoia. Learning that Marlon Brando had once been considered for the role revived familiar feelings of rejection. Emotions Hackman channeled directly into the character. His ability to transform self-doubt into compelling drama became one of his defining strengths. Yet fame did not bring lasting peace. Financial pressures occasionally forced him to accept projects for practical reasons, reminding him that professional success could not solve every personal problem. Behind the acclaim remained a man still wrestling with uncertainty and the need to prove himself. The 1980s were rough, full of painful losses. First, the death of a close friend, Norman Gary, and then the collapse of his long partnership with Faye Maltese left kind of lasting emotional scars. After all that, people around him noticed his guarded personality, on and off set, more than once, and it always seemed a little set in. Still, Hackman stayed one of Hollywood's most respected actors. His acclaimed work in Mississippi Burning brought yet another Academy Award nomination, and it basically solidified his reputation for sheer intensity and strict professionalism. Later on, The Royal Tenenbaums turned into one of what many call his final iconic appearances. He initially seemed to resist the whole project because the family themes felt uncomfortably personal, like it was too close for comfort. But in the end, he performed a lot of folks rate among his best. All through his career, Hackman's toughness, his temper, and his determination could sometimes spark tension. Yes, but they also seemed to fuel his brilliance. The characters people remember most didn't just feel dramatic. They felt grounded. It's like they showed something real, a man forever wrestling with self-doubt and rejection, and also that need to prove he was enough. The hardships he faced in his private life continued to shadow him even beyond the camera's glare, revealing deeper struggles behind the public image. Private battles and public masks. Gene Hackman spent much of his life hiding vulnerability behind a tough, controlled exterior. Even after decades of fame, he remained intensely private, revealing little about his health or personal struggles. When he underwent angioplasty in 1990, the episode was handled quietly, reflecting his lifelong preference to keep difficult moments away from public attention. His marriage to Betsy Arakawa in 1991 gave him stability after years of personal turmoil. Together, they built a private life far removed from Hollywood. Yet Hackman's fiercely combative streak never completely disappeared. Even in his 70s, he was involved in a physical confrontation following a traffic dispute, showing that the intensity which fueled many of his performances remained part of him off-screen. Physically, Hackman appeared remarkably resilient. He continued cycling into old age and survived a 2012 bicycle accident with relatively minor injuries. But beneath that strength, serious illness was developing. After his death, medical findings revealed severe cardiovascular disease, kidney damage, and advanced Alzheimer's disease, conditions the public had never fully known about. His final days were especially tragic. Betsy became seriously ill with hantavirus pulmonary syndrome, while Hackman's dementia left him increasingly confused and vulnerable. After her death, investigators believed he may not have fully understood what had happened. The heartbreaking circumstances exposed a side of Hackman few had ever seen. The man famous for commanding roles and intimidating characters was ultimately facing illness, isolation, and fading memory. Friends often described him as someone who rarely revealed his deepest emotions. That guarded personality may have helped him survive rejection, career struggles, and personal loss, but it also meant many of his hardest battles remained invisible. Behind Gene Hackman's legendary screen presence was a complicated man shaped by toughness, pride, pain, and relentless determination. His final years revealed the vulnerability that fame had hidden for decades. From this quiet pain inside Hackman's final years, the medical findings would eventually bring clarity about the reality he faced alone. The final truth confirmed. The medical examiner's report finally revealed what Gene Hackman had been quietly enduring during his final years. He suffered from serious heart disease, congestive heart failure, kidney damage linked to high blood pressure, and had an implanted pacemaker. His medical history also included major cardiac procedures, showing just how much strain his body had endured. But perhaps the most heartbreaking finding was advanced Alzheimer's disease. The diagnosis had never been publicly disclosed. Examination of Hackman's brain showed significant deterioration, revealing that the once sharp and commanding actor had been facing a severe neurological decline largely outside the public eye. Investigators also found elevated acetone levels in his system, which can occur after prolonged periods without food. This suggested Hackman may have gone days without eating, adding another disturbing detail to the circumstances surrounding his death. Attention also turned to his wife, Betsy Arakawa, and investigators basically said there was no clear sign of foul play. They ruled out carbon monoxide poisoning too. In the end, it was decided Arakawa died from hantavirus pulmonary syndrome, a rare illness that's linked to exposure to infected rodents. Her death left Hackman alone in their home. He was already dealing with advanced Alzheimer's and severe cardiovascular disease, so you could say he was not in the best shape. Investigators believed his condition may have stopped him from fully understanding what had happened to her or at least he couldn't really process it. The results later pushed aside a lot of the rumors around how the couple died. Hackman tested negative for hantavirus, and authorities said his death was due mainly to cardiovascular disease, with Alzheimer's acting as a major contributing factor.
The cause of death for Mr. Gene Hackman, aged 95 years, is hypertensive and atherosclerotic cardiovascular disease, with Alzheimer's disease as a significant contributory factor.
Not some neat explanation like a thriller. The truth, if you want it straight, wasn't some Hollywood conspiracy. It was something more human and more tragic. Behind Gene Hackman's legendary performances, there was, essentially, an aging man quietly facing serious illness. The final medical findings do not take away from his legacy. Instead, they show you the vulnerability behind the icon, and they add a deeply somber final chapter to an extraordinary life. Gene Hackman's story reminds us that behind every great public figure lies a private life full of complexity and struggle. His legacy is more than his roles. It's the resilience he showed in facing challenges few ever saw. If you found this insight compelling, please like and subscribe for more stories that reveal the real lives behind the legends. Your support brings these truths to light. And before you go, watch the next video appearing on your screen. It uncovers another remarkable story hiding behind a familiar name.